Super Dimensional Love Gun is the most insane manga I have ever read, and you absolutely need it in your life. If you're the right type of person. I'm not gonna lie, this is not for everybody. Some of you would probably have nightmares after reading this, or vomit, or at least feel like you're gonna vomit. And it's not to say that this is a super dark or dismal story. It's not that it's a difficult read per se. It's just that it is gross and disturbing and freakish. This is the kind of book that if your mom or grandma who was religious caught you reading it, they will send you to Bible camp and assure you that you are going to hell. So Shintaro Kago, I made a video about him before, my Respect the Greats video. He's one of my favorite artists. He is known as a guro artist, but also as just a postmodern, absurd, and insane artist in general. He has done animation shorts, he's made tons of manga shorts, he's done just like hundreds of illustrations. He's a very fast worker, very active on Twitter, and you can see stuff of his all over the place. He's known for the fashionable paranoia style, as it's been described, and is considered the bizarre manga artist. And, he's true to his name in this collection. So what Super Dimensional Love Gun is, it's called the Pretty Girls Collection, but it's because it's a collection of stories that were published in various magazines over the years. The only connecting theme being that they are all stories about pretty girls. But each one is basically just a spiral into utter madness. Each chapter begins by establishing some kind of basic conceit, and then running as far as humanly possible with that conceit into the realm of absolute insanity. So for instance, chapter 2 is about a girl who's obsessed with developing and scratching itches. She wants to feel an itch, she wants to scratch the itch, and she will go to great lengths to create itches for herself to scratch. And then she falls in with a crowd of people who all like to have this same sort of fetish, and they are all going to all these gross, disgusting extremes with it until it ends in, the furthest extent of where you could take this plot. And that's basically the formula for most of Shintaro Kago's stories. Right on page 1, he establishes some really fucked shit, and then he goes deeper and deeper into the imagination. And it's frequently shocking, surprising, and always hilarious. The thing that kind of makes this book readable is that it is basically the darkest comedy imaginable. And when I say dark, I mean there is plenty of rape, there's plenty of dismemberment, violence, extreme gore, tons of sexual content. It's basically at 11 most of the time. And it's always presented in a tongue-in-cheek, goofy, kind of sarcastic, ironic way where, nothing is even remotely serious, nothing is even in the realm of reality. Some of these stories go way into the absurd, way into the imaginative. It's I don't want to talk about too much of it in depth because I don't want to spoil things, but I feel like I'd have to describe at least a few of these stories for you to really get it. So, for instance, chapter 4 of this is about a girl who is this mythical creature from, I think, Thailand, who her head comes off of her body with all of her internal organs attached. Shintaro Kago has a bunch of illustrations of this nature where he shows these creatures like whole societies of these mythical creatures. But in this particular story, this girl, her head always comes off of her body whenever she comes. So she keeps trying to have sex with different guys, but she always ends up scaring them away when her head comes off. And we learn about some of the other problems that come with having this condition, such as sometimes her head comes off when she's asleep and insects get into her body. Sometimes the organs don't quite reconnect properly and she ends up shitting inside her own body because her, tracts aren't connected. We later learn that she can give other people her condition through blood, and so she starts deliberately infecting other people, but it doesn't go right at first, and like it'll be like just their hair comes off with all their organs and not their whole head. It keeps going from there. Like this is generally what the chapters are like, just more and more madness following this concept, coming up with every possible permutation of how this thing could be applied to human nature. And then there's some chapters that, some of them are definitely meant to just be shocking and absurd. There's one where a pair of women get into an abortion contest, trying to see who can have the most and most stylish abortions. It makes more sense in context, but again, I don't want to spoil too much. Towards the back of the book, there are a bunch of these ones that are presented as just pages with like 6 panels on them each, that are shorter comics that are more disconnected and don't have as much of like an ongoing story so much as just weird like fever dream ideas. They're similar to the other chapters, but just even more bizarre, I guess, even harder to sort of parse. They don't have like as much of a through line narratively, and there's some chapters that are just ultra short and are just basically building towards one crazy punchline. But yeah, I mean, that's the gist of this book. You're gonna see everything. Things you never imagined, things you imagined and pretended you didn't imagine, things that you're shocked are possible to be published, not just in magazines, but especially, I mean, I'm holding a physical copy of this. I didn't think this was gonna be possible. I didn't know that, Shintaro Kago's works could ever be published in the US, and I cannot thank Denpa enough for publishing it. So Denpa is a fairly new publisher. I, without even realizing it, had already reviewed one of their previous works that they published, Invitation from a Crab by Panpanya. Both of these are like cult beloved artists that they're, bringing over, and I saw them at Otakon at their booth. They gave me these 2 slipcovers for these books. So this is the cover for Super Dimensional Love Gun. This is the one for Invitation with a Crab, and they are commissioned by the guy who co-runs Denpa. Like, he commissioned the artists to make these for them, and they also had a bunch of these limited, like super limited edition Invitation from a Crab tote bags that Panpanya had been selling on their store. They had like a super limited edition Rangi Murata like art book, like a small art book that Pantsu Party bought. So yeah, I really appreciate everything they're doing, and they're bringing out Kaiji this fall, so that's probably going to be a big deal, and I'm excited for that. I'll probably cover it on Manga Mondays as well, but like I can't fucking believe that they released this. Like, the balls it must have taken, the complaints that they would get if certain people were aware. Like, I don't know if this can be sold in a Barnes & Noble, but if it can, I will be excited. I mean, it really is like all out on the sex and violence front. I can't even show you that much like really crazy stuff. I mean, this is on YouTube. I made my previous Shintaro Kago video and tried really hard to not show any sexual content, or what I did was like, obscured enough by the artistry that it wasn't immediately obvious what you were looking at. But there's a lot of sexual content in here, and Shintaro Kago is one of those artists who sort of can go into whatever level of detail he feels like, really. A lot of this has sort of a gag manga feel to it. The characters are not usually drawn in that much detail. They're usually drawn in kind of goofy or even derpy ways, but he's capable of giving them whatever expressions he needs, going into more detail. A lot of the cover arts of the individual chapters are really gorgeous. So yeah, you get a good variety of styles and levels of detail and gruesomeness. I'm just looking at a page where a guy's vomiting out his organs, and it's pretty fucking insane. There's one chapter where every time somebody gets a piercing, there's this white thread that comes out of it, and if you pull the white thread, it causes like something to happen on some part of your body. This one girl who has piercings like all over her body, this like doctor who manages the white threads is just like fucking around with her, and like he pulls one thread, it just makes her like endlessly come. Pulling other threads makes, you know, blood shoot out, makes you menstruate, makes you fart uncontrollably or shit your brains out. So yeah, it's you know, a lot of it is just scatological humor or insane violent humor, and there's also a sexiness to it. I mean, Shintaro Kago can draw girls that are legitimately attractive. There's not really a lot of titillating sexual scenarios in this manga, and most of them end horribly, but if you're a sick enough fuck, you could probably masturbate to it. So it's got that as well. Honestly, I can't really go into too much more detail about this. It is what it is. You're either going to love this or you're going to run screaming from it. But I absolutely loved it. I would legitimately consider this one of my favorite manga of all time. I had a great fucking time. I love Shintaro Kago. I love Denpa for bringing it over. Thank you again for that. And that's it for this episode of Manga Mondays. If you want to buy this manga, I would encourage you to use the Amazon Associates link in the description, because then I will get a kickback of the profits. Consider it a finder's fee, I guess. And on the next episode of Manga Mondays, I'll be reviewing Ryuko. This is a like badass action and hot girls manga with a really cool like old school art style that I am really excited to read. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you then.